Okay, so you guys have already done a huge amount of work, and I know there was a lot of angst yesterday around some of the discoveries that you made and that you had. So the first question that I want to tackle well, there's a couple that circle around the same idea, and it's a really big idea, really the basic baseline question that all people must ask, which is, should I even do this? Should I even go on? Like, is it even worth it? How do I know that my manuscript is good enough to warrant putting all this time and effort and energy and hope and faith and everything into it? And I mean, I think that's really the baseline question. How do you know if it's good enough? And I think that I love that you guys ask these questions because, you know, when you start to actually look at the work in a very specific and particular way, and you turn your mind from creation to, okay, now this is going to be a thing I want to put out in the universe, and I want people to read, and I want people to love and respond to and react to. It's a mindset shift. It is a big mindset shift. And a lot of writers don't make the shift. They freak out. They don't like it. It's uncomfortable, and they put the work aside. They say, well, I'll do that later, or I'll figure that out, or I'll somehow, grow into being able to do that, or, you know, whatever narrative that they tell themselves about that, this moment in the creative process. And then they never do it. They never do it. Those are the people that tend to put things in the drawer for 10 years, or, you know, they say, well, once I wrote a draft of a book, but I never did anything about it. And I mean, I just want you to get over that hump and that roadblock so much, because yeah, it's uncomfortable to look at your work and to face it and to think, oh my gosh, there's weaknesses, there's things I could do better, I'm not perfect, I'm not genius, you know, those are the things you're really facing. And so how do you make that assessment? Like, when do you actually decide maybe it's not worth it? Maybe it's not worth it. You know, that's something to really think about, because there are times when that's true. There are times when it's like, okay, there are so many things wrong with this, and I've already spent so much energy getting to where I am today, and I don't actually have the energy to give this what it needs to go on, and I'm going to decide not to do that. There is a time that happens. In my experience, which is pretty vast, I've worked with a lot of writers over a lot of years and a lot of circumstances. It doesn't happen very often. So very, very rare does a writer make that call. If they've gotten as far as you guys have gotten, which is to say there's a rough draft and they're doing it and they're ready and to dig in, then odds are really good that you can get to where you want to go. And I think the biggest metric here has actually nothing to do with the story itself. It doesn't matter what you found in your pages. It doesn't matter what weaknesses. It doesn't matter how much you have to do. None of that matters. What really only matters here is, do you have the energy to give to this? Do you still have heat and energy and passion and light for this thing? Or does it feel like a big, giant, dreadful responsibility just on your shoulders, sort of heavy, horrible thing? If it feels like that, then I say, yeah, that's the moment when you say, okay, I'm going to put this aside, and I'm going to call this the experience that I needed to have to get to my next thing. And I'm going to get to my next thing, my next project, my next idea, my next creation, my next book, my next story, whatever the next thing is. And I'm going to bring everything I learned and everything I did wrong to this new thing. And I have energy for that, but I don't have energy for this other. So I think it's your spirit that you're measuring in many ways, how you really feel about this task. Now, the only caveat to that advice is if you're doing that because you're chicken. So if you're saying, I don't have the energy to do this. It's too much. It's too heavy. It's too big. I'm going to put it aside. I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to move on. If you have a habit of doing that, like if you've done that time after time after time after time, and you're that person who keeps going to the new project, who keeps not doing the hard work, who keeps not facing that truth, who keeps just saying, well, I'll just do the next thing. Well, I'll just do the next thing. Well, I'll just do the next idea. That's not good. So that's the only caveat, is if you're using it as an excuse.